Hi, my name is Velasco. There is a presentation called Gustavo Petro. Losing your ethos is an analysis on the concept of ethos and the three of its components: credibility, authority, and authenticity, based on the figure of Colombia's president, Gustavo Petro. Before we talk about Gustavo Petro and how he lost his ethos, it's important, especially for non-Colombians, to understand the road that brought us here. Colombia has been shaped by cycles of violence between independence in 1819 and the early 20th century. The country endured 9 civil wars. That instability culminated in the Thousand Days War of 1903. What followed was 4 decades of relative peace, until 1948, when the assassination of liberal leader Jorge Eliezer Gaitán triggered a new broader conflict, a 60-year civil war fueled by guerrilla groups, paramilitaries, and drug cartels. Colombia became globally known not for its beauty or culture, but for its violence. Then, in 2002, Álvaro Uribe came to power promising to restore order through military strength. With US backing and the democratic security police, he enjoyed record-breaking approval ratings, but his presidency was stained by the Falso Positivo scandal, where the army murdered innocent civilians and passed them off as guerrilla groups to inflate combat stats. His successor, Juan Manuel Santos, surprised the nation by negotiating peace with the FARC in 2016, demobilizing the largest guerrilla group. But corruption and political fatigue followed, opening the door for Iván Duque, a Uribista president whose term was marked by COVID-19, mass migration, and a failed tax reform that shaped 2021 protests, known as the social explosion. In the case of these protests, one figure stood out: Gustavo Petro, a former M19 guerrilla member and a longtime critic of the establishment. Petro had lost the 2018 elections, but returned as a powerful symbol of opposition. With plazas full and frustration high, he rode the wave of protests into the presidency in 2022, narrowly winning with the promise to transform Colombia. At first, it seemed like a new era. He appointed highly qualified ministers, promised social reform, and inspired hope among millions. But 3 years later, much of that hope has withered. He cycled through 34 ministers, many replaced by loyalists with little experience. Guerrilla groups are recruiting again. His foreign minister publicly accused him of drug use. His approval rating has plummeted to 29%. The same voice that once electrified crowds now struggles to convince even his base. This video explores how Petro, a man who once embodied the dream of political change, lost the most important element of public persuasion: ethos, through the lenses of authority, credibility, and authenticity. We'll see how his rhetoric lost its power, and why, without ethos, even the strongest arguments can fall flat. How can we measure the authority someone has over a topic? According to Professor O'Gorman, our authority stems from the knowledge we possess, and knowledge is precisely what authorized Petro in the first place. Though now often mocked by its opponents as a junkie Gabriel Garcia Marquez wannabe, lost in metaphors and detached from reality, Petro once embodied preparation and intellectual sharpness. During the 2022 presidential debates, he was unmatched. His answers were informed, direct, and strategic. He dismantled his rivals with clarity and depth. At the start of his term, he reinforced this image by surrounding himself by a cabinet of experts: José Antonio Campo, a world-renowned economist; Alejandro Gaviria, former rector of Colombia's most prestigious university; and Cecilia López Montaño, a respected voice in rural development. So how did it fall apart? His authority unraveled when that expert-driven government became politically fragile. Ministers who disagreed with him were quickly replaced, not for incompetence, but for disloyalty. Soon, his cabinet was filled with loyalists, many lacking proper credentials. Today, some government officials don't even hold university degrees or are unable to defend their theses publicly. Meanwhile, once promising policies crumbled. His intervention in the health-providing institutions made the system the most dysfunctional it's been since the 1990s. His total peace policy weakened military operations, emboldening illegal groups instead of pacifying them. His anti-oil stance, despite petroleum being Colombia's top export, took investor confidence and worsened the fiscal crisis. Petro began his presidency with the backing of knowledge. He had authority, but he traded it for obedience and lost both. Policy failure alone would have dented his credibility, but Petro's downfall has been amplified by a pattern of disinformation and inconsistency. Just this week, he shared a video of a bridge in Wichita, Kansas, firstly claiming it was built by his government in one of Colombia's remote regions. He routinely posts mislabeled videos, from Brazilian plantations presented as Colombian to economic data that doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Many of his posts on X now carry community notes, something unthinkable for a head of state. He frequently attacks government officials with false claims, like accusing Bogota's mayor of giving water priority to Coca-Cola during a drought, an outright lie. He has publicly labeled critics neo-Nazis, including a senator who was later shot. This rhetoric is dangerous and deeply irresponsible. Petro has also developed an habit for disappearing. He misses key events, from ignoring farmers who wait hours under the sun to ghosting international financial summits and state visits. He once promised not to push for constitutional reform, and now openly advocates for it. His anti-corruption image is in tatters. Scandals tied to his administration, ranging from misused disaster relief funds to his own son's campaign finance admissions, have shattered the narrative he once built. Aristotle said that ethos, the credibility of a speaker, depends on 3 things. First, do they know what they are talking about? Petro's policy blunders and falsehoods suggest otherwise. Second, do they care about what they say? He rarely checks facts and shows little concern for informed dialogue. And 3, do they care about their audience? His repeated absences and hostilities suggest deep disregard. The man who once promised to change a corrupt system now seems to have recreated his own version of it. Petro's final undoing may be the collapse of his authenticity. He once marched beside ordinary citizens in protest, embodying the spirit of resistance. He wasn't just a candidate, he was one of us. That image quickly evaporated. Within months of taking office, he began aligning with the very political figures he once denounced. He gave power to Holman Morris, a man repeatedly accused of domestic abuse and sexual harassment, appointing him to run RTBC, Colombia's public media system. One of his closest allies, Armando Benedetti, a politician with a well-known history of corruption and drug addiction, became a key figure in his government. Another close advisor, Laura Sarabia, was involved in a scandal where a housekeeper was allegedly detained and interrogated with state resources over a missing envelope containing $5,000. Then came revelations that public funds meant for disaster relief in indigenous communities were mishandled. Instead of maintaining a cabinet built to solve Colombia's toughest problems, Petro has turned it into a shield, surrounding himself with friends, families, and loyalists who never challenge him. Even grassroots organizations and protest movements that once stood by his side have started to turn against him. Authenticity isn't just about having a good origin story, it's about staying true to it, and Petro, it seems, forgot where he came from. I'll now give my conclusions. Gustavo Petro rose to power by mastering 3 pillars of persuasion: pathos, logos, and ethos. He stirred people's emotions with the language of protest and social justice. He used reasoned arguments, policy critiques, and facts to dismantle his opponents. But it was his ethos, his image as a credible, authentic, and knowledgeable outsider that sealed his victory, and that is exactly what he lost. The same emotional appeal and rational arguments that once filled plazas and inspired millions now fall flat. Why? Because ethos is not just a pillar, it's one of the foundations. Without it, the rest collapses. Petro no longer speaks with the authority he once had. He pushed aside brilliant experts and replaced them with political allies. His credibility eroded with every misinformation tweet, every no-show at key events, every false accusation. A president flagged repeatedly by fact-checkers cannot ask his citizens to trust him. His authenticity, once his grand straight, is now barely recognizable. Petro the protester has become Petro the establishment. Petro, the voice of the people, now silences dissent. Petro, the symbol of anti-corruption, presides over a government riddled with scandal. And so we are left with an example, one that speaks far beyond Colombia's borders. If ethos is shattered, even the most powerful pathos and the sharpest logos are rendered useless. Authenticity, credibility, and authority aren't luxuries for a public communicator. They are essentials.